Welcome back to our Newsmax special coverage of the 2016 Republican National Convention. I'm Ed Berliner, joined by host of his show seen every weeknight right here on Newsmax from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Steve Malzberg. Joined now also by presidential historian and New York Times bestselling author of Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan, and several other books about Ronald Reagan, Craig Shirley. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. All right, Craig, let's bring you into the conversation here. First two nights of the Republican National Convention, what have you seen that really strikes you as being of note?
Well, what strikes me is that party, I mean, you have to talk to your base. You have to motivate your base. But you also use these opportunities to reach out beyond, to involve Democrats and independents to join your campaign. I remember Reagan in 1980 in his acceptance speech, and Trump still has time to do this in his acceptance speech, but he made open appeals to Democrats and independents to join his coalition of shared values. He invoked the name of Franklin Roosevelt very, very warmly. So so far it's been a lot of fire and brimstone and red meat, but and then last night was supposedly about jobs, except I didn't hear anybody talk about how they were going to create new jobs in America. I heard a lot of trashing of Hillary Clinton, but I haven't heard a lot extolling the virtues of American conservatism. So, and plus you've had all the delegates, 700 delegates voted against Trump, and the problems over Mrs. Trump's speech. So I would not say that this convention so far has been a roaring success.
Michael, or should I say, Craig, it's fair to say also that what you just said, where you didn't hear much about jobs on Tuesday, we spoke to General Michael Hayden, and when it comes down to making America safe, he pointed out on Monday, I didn't hear any specifics either. So is it not time, Craig, for the Republicans to spin and start putting some specifics in here? It's what people finally want to hear.
Yes, absolutely. And especially in the face of what Hillary's going to propose. Hillary's got an advantage now because she's going to see where the Republicans have failed to address their own themes of their own days, and she's going to trump them, no pun intended, with her own more specific proposals. So she'll end up with at least a rhetorical advantage come the end of next week.
Steve, let's go ahead and talk about some of the numbers here right now, because Real Clear Politics keeps a very good track of the average of what's going on here. Fair to say that Donald Trump is gaining ground. And if you look at two of the polls that are in here, the LA Times USC poll has Donald Trump up by 1, and then the Rasmussen Reports poll has Donald Trump up by 7. Overall, it shows Hillary Clinton leading with about a 3-point lead. Isn't it fair to say, though, that Donald Trump's going to get a bounce here this week? Because that happens. You've had the experience covering these conventions and ballots before. It's a matter of he's got to figure out a way to keep it and make sure that that bounce doesn't overwhelm him next week from Philadelphia.
Right. He'll get a bounce. She'll get a bounce. But when push comes to shove, there's going to be great distinction between the two conventions. I don't think there's anybody, independent or Democrat or Republican, who sat there, average person, with all due respect to Craig and everybody else who's criticized this, and waited with bated breath yesterday for an economic plan. They were into what they were hearing. They learned from what they heard, and I think they got what they tuned in for. That will come. Donald Trump, hopefully in his acceptance speech, will map some of it out. I know that Larry Kudlow and Stephen Moore have written a very extensive economic plan for Donald Trump. They told me they were going to roll it out about a week ago. It hasn't been rolled out yet, but it will be. I just think that this is a time for America to be educated about Hillary. And there are a lot of people who don't know a lot about Hillary. And I think bringing up the mother of a victim of Benghazi, who the liberal media attacked viciously, shows just gives a little bit of light and a little bit of insight into who Hillary Clinton is, that this mother is treated like garbage to this day by Hillary and the State Department when it comes to the death of her son. So I think they should keep doing what they're doing. And I think you'll see different sides of Donald Trump through, like I said, his son tonight, his daughter tomorrow, and you'll see ideas from Pence and others as we go along.
Yeah, Steve, let me hit you with this, though. Isn't it fair to say, though, that when you're talking about the mother of the Benghazi victim that you're talking about, her entire speech, which was very emotional, was completely blown out on Fox because Donald Trump picked up the telephone and called in to Bill O'Reilly? Doesn't he need to show a little bit more concern about what goes on and stop taking the limelight for himself 24/7? And let other people carry the water for him from time to time? That was a brilliant moment that was completely wiped out because he had to get on the phone and promote himself.
Well, it was completely wiped out on Fox. I do agree that was a big mistake. I can't defend that. I can't even explain that. It's not like he's done that with other speakers, so I don't think he'll do it again. Hopefully he'll learn from that. I can't figure that one out.
All right, Craig, let's bring you back in here because let's look at some of the history that's going on here right now. What is it, in your opinion, that needs to be done moving forward here now as we're into that third night? Mike Pence is going to take the stage tonight, and there's a lot of people, Steve and I talked about it in the first block, some people who believe that Mike Pence isn't the greatest vice presidential choice. Steve believes that he is exactly what Donald Trump needs. What do we need to hear from Mike Pence that pushes the needle forward to bring this base together?
Well, I would say, my own opinion is I think that they need to talk about the future. They need to talk about the future. They need to talk about a future of prosperity and opportunity. They need to make open appeals to young people to join that, open appeals to the future. Is that, Hillary Clinton it's not going to be hard to portray her as being stuck in the past, as being part of the status quo, which is anti-progress, which is anti-future, which is anti-opportunity. But so far, the Republican Party hasn't made that case. So we've got an incomplete equation. We're making a case against Hillary just fine, but we're not making a case for Donald Trump or for the Republican Party, and that's where this convention is so sorely lacking right now.
Let's go ahead and grab a couple of phone calls here at 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-NEWSMAX. Carl is in Dolores, Colorado. Carl, you are talking about Melania Trump here, the speech last night, and you believe that we need to follow what she said. What specifically?
Thanks, Ed, Steve, and Craig. First of all, I'm an American, constitutionalist, veteran, trucker, biker, athlete, and very passionate, also a Christ follower, and very passionate about knowledgeable freedom and not entitled freedom. As far as the missuses, Obama and Trump, the Trumps should not be apologizing for what Mrs. Trump said. We should all be saying the words that they were talking about: work ethics, family values. We should all be talking about that. Every family, every person, this is what's going to change our country. We don't. Why aren't we talking about these things and coming together?
Well, let me ask you this, Carl. Does it bother you at all that some of her speech was plagiarized?
I don't think it was.
No, it was. It actually was. No, it was plagiarized. It was pulled. It absolutely was.
Well, then it doesn't bother me. I'm glad she used the words over and over, and let's continue to use those words, because those are the words that are going to help this country get better. She was talking about good work ethics, family values. What's the problem with that? Why are we worrying about it? Let's go down the road and start talking about it more. Let's use those words more.
There you go. 1-877-NEWSMAX. Steve, you want to counter on that?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, this obsession with plagiarizing, this was explained today, we haven't mentioned that yet, that the woman who works for the Trump organization, who wrote the speech, with help from Melania sent in a bunch of quotes and whatnot. This woman admitted she didn't vet them. She put them in the speech without checking that they were verbatim quotes, and she regrets it, and she offered to resign, and Donald Trump said, no, everybody makes good-intentioned mistakes. I'm not accepting your resignation. And I think that speaks to who Donald Trump is as well. But again, I'll point out the media is still obsessed with this. 2 days later, when they couldn't care less about candidate Obama plagiarizing from the governor of Massachusetts, Hillary has plagiarized from Bernie. Hillary plagiarized reportedly in her book. Of course, Joe Biden plagiarized in law school.
Actually, all that's been talked about.
And nobody cares.
All that's
but
been
when
talked
it's a
about.
Republican, that's when they care.
All right, Craig, let me come to you then. Let's go ahead and move forward then as you talk about moving forward. Ted Cruz is going to speak tonight, getting ready for 2020. Isn't it interesting, though, Craig? Everybody is always looking to go ahead and set themselves up down the road. It seems interesting to me that people are saying that Ted Cruz is setting himself up for 2020. That would indicate that some of this shadow convention issue that we're hearing is maybe even true. There are Republicans who feel we're going to lose this election, so we better have somebody getting ready for 2020. What does it say to you?
Well, that shadow group that's meeting there in Cleveland is all establishmentarians. Ted Cruz would be their last choice to lead them back to victory in 4 years or 8 years. Their choice would be Jeb Bush or somebody else from the establishment. I really feel for Ted Cruz in this regard, because he's got his what is best for him politically, but also his wife and his honor to consider. You know, Trump said some vicious, really awful things about Mrs. Cruz. And I don't believe he's apologized for that. So I'm not sure that Ted Cruz owes an endorsement to Donald Trump. On the other hand, as I go back to '64, and I'm not comparing now Barry Goldwater and Donald Trump. Barry Goldwater was a great American hero, and the founder of the modern American.
15 seconds.
But the only two people, Mitt Romney's father cut and run on Barry Goldwater, Bill Scranton cut and run on Barry Goldwater. The only two people who stood by Barry Goldwater were Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, and both went on to become elected president of the United States. So Ted Cruz is torn right now between his wife's honor and his own honor and his political ambition.
We got to stop there. Reminder again, the book is Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. We're up against the break. Craig Shirley, thanks so much for joining us, my friend. I'm sure we're going to do it again real soon. Steve Malzberg remains. More of your calls as we continue our coverage of the 2016 GOP.